All right, let's talk about something that pretty much runs our lives, but also causes a ton of confusion and stress: money. We're all taught to think about it like it's math, a numbers game. But what if I told you the real secret to being wealthy has almost nothing to do with numbers at all?
I mean, think about it. We're told finance is like physics, a hard science with these strict, unbreakable rules. But if that's really true, then why do we see some of the smartest people on the planet making absolutely crazy, disastrous decisions with their money? And on the flip side, why do we see people with zero formal training build incredible fortunes? It just doesn't add up, does it?
Well, here's the thing. It's because doing well with money has very little to do with how smart you are. It's almost entirely about how you behave. It's way more psychology than it is spreadsheet. And to really get our heads around this, let's start by busting a few big myths. Okay, first up, the myth of the genius investor. The idea that you need a fancy MBA and some super complex understanding of the markets to get rich. Let me tell you a quick story about two guys who completely turned that whole idea on its head. So in one corner, you've got Ronald Reed. He was a gas station attendant and a janitor in rural Vermont his whole life. And in the other corner, Richard Fuscone, Harvard MBA, top executive at Merrill Lynch. I mean, you literally couldn't dream up two people with a bigger gap in their financial training. So who do you think came out on top? Get this. When Ronald Reed, the janitor, passed away back in 2014, he left behind an $8 million fortune. His friends, his family, everyone was just floored. And no, this wasn't from a lottery ticket or some secret inheritance. So what was his secret weapon? It was almost ridiculously simple. He saved whatever little bits he could, he bought good, solid blue chip stocks, and then he just waited. He was patient for decades. Meanwhile, Fuscone, our Harvard genius, did the exact opposite. He got greedy, he took on massive debt to fund this crazy, extravagant lifestyle. And when the 2008 financial crisis hit, poof, the whole house of cards collapsed and he went bankrupt. And that's the whole lesson right there. Ronald Reed was patient. Richard Fuscone was greedy. That's it. That one simple behavioral difference completely wiped out a massive, massive gap in education and experience. It proves, without a doubt, that how you act with your money is so much more powerful than what you know about it. All right, on to myth number 2. This is the idea that success is all about your personal skill and hard work, and that luck has nothing to do with it. To bust this myth, we've got to talk about two forces that are so powerful, but we almost always ignore them: luck and risk. Just think of them as siblings. They are the exact same thing. Powerful forces outside of our individual effort, just pointing in opposite directions. And there's no better example of this than this next story. Let's talk about Bill Gates. The guy's a genius, no one's debating that. But his story also includes a huge, massive dose of good luck. See, back in 1968, his high school, Lakeside, just so happened to be one of the only high schools in the entire world to have a computer. A 13-year-old Bill Gates got obsessed, and that access gave him a head start that was just impossible for anyone else to get. I mean, seriously, think about those odds. The chances of a kid in 1968 going to a school with that kind of technology was literally about 1 in a million. Gates himself has said no Lakeside, no Microsoft. That right there is what pure, unfiltered luck looks like. But here's where risk, luck's dark twin, enters the picture. Gates had a best friend at Lakeside named Kent Evans. He was just as smart, just as obsessed with that computer, and they were planning on conquering the world together. Kent Evans never got the chance. He was killed in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school. The odds of that happening? Also about 1 in a million. It's the most perfect and brutal example you could find. Bill Gates was hit by a 1 in a million lightning bolt of luck. His best friend was hit by a 1 in a million lightning bolt of risk. Same force, completely different, and tragic outcomes. It's just a really humbling thing to remember, right? When we look at somebody's massive success or their terrible failure, we have to remember the invisible roles that luck and risk played. It all just boils down to this simple idea: nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. And that brings us, perfectly actually, to our third and final myth for today: the really dangerous idea that the goal is always more and that the goalpost for success should just keep moving forever. To see what I mean, just look at the story of Rajat Gupta.
I mean, this guy's story is incredible. He started with nothing, an orphan in Kolkata, and climbed to the absolute highest peak of the business world. CEO of McKinsey, board member at Goldman Sachs, philanthropist with Bill Gates, and he had a net worth of $100 million. By any possible definition, he had already won.
But $100 million wasn't enough. He wanted to be a billionaire. And that constant hunger, that need for more, led him to commit insider trading. It completely destroyed his reputation, and it landed him in prison. He risked everything he had and everything he needed for something he didn't have and absolutely did not need. It's a tragedy about what happens when you don't know when to stop moving the goalposts. There's this great story about the author Joseph Heller. A friend points out that a billionaire hedge fund manager made more money in a single day than Heller's classic novel Catch-22 had made in its entire history. And Heller's reply is just perfect. He says, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. So, if the goal isn't just a number that keeps getting bigger and bigger, then what are we even doing all this for? What is the real, ultimate prize that money is supposed to buy us? Well, a psychologist named Angus Campbell actually looked into this. He wanted to figure out the common denominator of what makes people happy. And what he found was pretty surprising. It wasn't how much money you made, it wasn't having a big house, it wasn't a fancy job. The single biggest thing that predicted happiness was way simpler. It was having a strong sense of control over your own life. And that right there is the highest form of wealth. That's the dividend that money can pay. True wealth isn't about buying fancy cars or expensive watches. It's the ability to wake up every single morning and say to yourself, I can do whatever I want today. It's about owning your time. That's freedom. So let's just recap real quick. How you behave is way more important than what you know. Luck and risk are always in the background, pulling strings. And the hardest but most important financial skill is knowing when you have enough. The real goal isn't just more money. It's what that money can get you. Total control over your time. So I'll just leave you with this one question to chew on. What would you do if you had total, complete control over your time? Answering that question for yourself might just be the best financial planning you ever do.